Rimuru, the New Beginning as Primordial Demon Violet by Veldanava God. Chapter 16. The Eastern Empire's Invasion Setting. Tempest's Border, Dawn of War. The sky above the lands of Tempest darkened as the massive forces of the Eastern Empire began their invasion. Over 2 million soldiers, armed with the latest magic and technology, marched toward the heart of Tempest. Their goal? To annihilate the monster nation and claim its lands. They believed that their sheer numbers and war machines would easily overpower the monsters and demons under Rimuru's command. But they hadn't accounted for the might of Rimuru's most loyal and fearsome subordinates, Ultima, Carrera, Testarossa, and Diablo. Nor for the deadly force known as the Black Numbers, an army of powerful demons under their command. As the Empire's army neared the borders of Tempest, they will soon learn that their arrogance was a fatal mistake. At the edge of Tempest, high atop a cliff overlooking the vast battlefield, Ultima, Carrera, Testarossa, and Diablo stood side by side. Their eyes gleamed with anticipation as they watched the Empire's forces advancing toward them like an endless tide. Ultima cracked her knuckles, her violet eyes glowing with malicious excitement. Ultima. Look at them. So many humans, marching to their deaths. I wonder how many screams I can pull from their throats before they break. Carrera, standing next to her with a cruel smile on her face, flipped her long, golden hair behind her shoulders. Carrera. Why stop at their throats? I plan to obliterate their very souls. Let them beg for mercy as I crush their existence into nothingness. Testarossa, ever composed and elegant in her demeanor, gave a chilling laugh. Her white hair swayed in the wind, her blood-red eyes gleaming with bloodlust. Testarossa. Oh, don't be so hasty, you two. We must give them the proper welcome before we send them to the abyss. I'm sure their commanders will appreciate a little diplomacy before their inevitable end. Diablo, standing with his hands in his pockets, his eyes cold and calculating, smirked at the enthusiasm of his fellow demons. Diablo. Let's make this quick. The master has more important things to attend to. Wiping out an army of weaklings like this is beneath him, shall we? Below them, the Black Numbers, an elite force of archdemons and greater demons, stood at attention, ready to unleash hell on the invading forces. With a simple nod from their commanders, they would descend upon the Empire's soldiers like a plague. Ultima. All right, enough talk. Let's show these fools what happens when you challenge the might of Tempest. With a gleeful cackle, Ultima leapt from the cliff, her body twisting in the air as she dove toward the battlefield. In an instant, the rest followed, their dark, ethereal forms blurring as they shot toward the approaching army. Setting. The battlefield. The Empire's front lines. The soldiers of the Eastern Empire marched in perfect formation, their banners fluttering in the wind. They were confident, prepared for a standard battle against monsters and their ruler. But as the commanders rode at the front, something strange began to happen. A low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet, and the sky above them seemed to darken even further, as if the very heavens themselves were recoiling from the evil that approached. Panic began to ripple through the ranks as they saw shapes materializing in the air above them, dark figures descending like birds of prey. And then, the demons struck. Ultima, laughing maniacally, landed in the center of the Empire's front lines. Her form blurred for a split second before exploding outward with incredible force. Her magicules swirled around her, and in the blink of an eye, thousands of soldiers were ripped apart, their bodies torn to shreds by the sheer power of her presence. Blood sprayed into the air as Ultima ripped through the lines of soldiers like a storm of death, her attacks swift and merciless. Her laughter echoed across the battlefield as she grabbed a nearby soldier by the throat and crushed his neck with a flick of her wrist. Ultima. Come on, is this the best you can do? Fight back, let me hear your screams? Her power was overwhelming. With a wave of her hand, she conjured a massive sphere of dark energy and hurled it into the ranks of the Empire's soldiers. The explosion that followed vaporized hundreds in an instant, leaving only charred remains and craters in its wake. Carrera, meanwhile, targeted the Empire's war machines. She hovered above the battlefield, her arms crossed as she smirked down at the tanks and magical cannons that had been deployed. With a single snap of her fingers, she unleashed a devastating mana blast that tore through the machines like paper. Metal crumbled, and explosions rocked the battlefield as the Empire's technological advancements were reduced to rubble. Carrera. Pathetic. Did you really think your toys could stand against me? With a cruel smile, she summoned another wave of destruction, her attacks precise and devastating. Soldiers screamed as their weapons exploded in their hands, and entire battalions were wiped out in the blink of an eye. Testarossa was more methodical in her approach. She moved through the battlefield like a ghost, her white hair flowing behind her as she elegantly dispatched the soldiers around her. With each flick of her wrist, soldiers collapsed, their bodies writhing in agony as her dark magic ate away at their life force. Testarossa. Such a waste. You should have stayed home, little soldiers. Now you'll all die in despair. Her cursed magic seeped into the very souls of those she touched, their bodies disintegrating into dust as they screamed for mercy. She relished the sound of their agony, her smile widening with each life she claimed. Diablo, ever the perfectionist, moved with an eerie grace as he weaved through the battlefield. He showed no emotion as he cut down wave after wave of soldiers, his attacks swift and efficient. Each flick of his fingers sent deadly bursts of demonic energy that pierced through armor and flesh with terrifying precision. Diablo. You should have never crossed my master. Now, you'll all pay the price. Unlike his comrades, Diablo took no pleasure in the carnage. His loyalty to Rimuru was absolute, and his only concern was ensuring that the enemy was completely eradicated. With a final flourish of his hand, he unleashed a powerful energy wave, disintegrating hundreds of soldiers in one fell swoop. The battle was a massacre. Within hours, the Eastern Empire's once mighty army was reduced to a sea of corpses. Over 1.2 million soldiers lay dead, their bodies littering the battlefield like discarded toys. Ultima alone had claimed the lives of 400,000, her bloodlust insatiable as she tore through the ranks of soldiers without mercy. Diablo had dispatched 200,000, his cold precision leaving no survivors in his wake. Carrera and Testarossa had claimed 150,000 each, their combined power annihilating everything in their path. The remaining soldiers were slaughtered by the Black Numbers, who reveled in the chaos and bloodshed. Setting. After the battle, as the smoke cleared and the screams of the dying faded, the demons regrouped on the blood-soaked battlefield. Ultima, covered in the blood of her enemies, stretched her arms, satisfied with the carnage. Ultima. That was fun, I haven't had a good fight like that in a long time. Carrera floated down beside her, wiping the blood from her hands with a bored expression. Carrera. Fun? Maybe for you. These weaklings weren't even a challenge. Testarossa joined them, her calm demeanor never wavering. Testarossa. We did what we needed to do. The Empire has been dealt a crushing blow. Now all that remains is their leadership. Diablo approached, his face as stoic as ever. Diablo. The battlefield is clear, and the Empire's forces have been decimated. Our task is complete. Ultima grinned, licking the blood off her fingers. Ultima. Well then, shall we report back to Rimuru-sama? I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear the results. The group gathered the Black Numbers, and together they left the battlefield behind, the remnants of the Eastern Empire's army scattered like dust in the wind. As they made their way back to Tempest, the land they had just conquered fell silent, a graveyard of blood and bodies, a testament to the overwhelming power of Rimuru's demon subordinates. The war with the Eastern Empire was far from over, but this battle had shown the world the terrifying strength of the Tempest Federation and its ruler. And for Ultima, Carrera, Testarossa, and Diablo, it was just the beginning. Chapter 17. The Emperor's Deception Setting. The Imperial Palace of Rudra. The imposing palace of Emperor Rudra stood as a symbol of the Eastern Empire's power. Its golden spires gleamed in the sunlight, casting long shadows over the landscape. Inside, the grand halls were filled with ornate decorations, tapestries depicting ancient battles, and guards standing at attention, their armor shining brightly. Rimuru and his subordinate trustids, Ultima, Diablo, and Benamaru, had been invited to a peace summit. After the Empire's devastating losses on the battlefield, Emperor Rudra had reached out, suggesting a ceasefire and a potential alliance. Although Rimuru had his doubts, he had decided to meet Rudra in person, hoping to avoid further bloodshed. They now walked down the opulent halls of the palace, their eyes scanning the grandeur around them, but their senses were keenly aware of any potential danger. Rimuru revised at Benimaru, who was walking beside him, his expression calm but ready for anything. Rimuru. This place is too peaceful. Keep your guard up, something doesn't feel right. Benimaru, always alert, nodded. Benimaru. Agreed. Rudra has been our enemy for too long. Offering peace now feels suspicious. Ultima, bouncing along beside them with a carefree smile, touched around at the palace guards with curiosity. Ultima. Do you think you'll try something fun, like a surprise attack? I'm always up for a little chaos. Diablo, walking with his hands behind his back, his eyes narrowed, spoke with a soft, menacing tone. Diablo. If the Emperor tries anything against Rimuru-sama, I will personally make him regret ever being born. Rimuru smiled at Diablo's fierce loyalty but kept his eyes forward as they approached the grand doors to the Emperor's throne room. The large double doors swung open with a deep creak, revealing the lavish throne room of the Eastern Empire. At the far end of the room sat Emperor Rudra, dressed in his imperial regalia, exuding an air of authority and power. Standing by his side was Velgrind, the fiery true dragon and Rudra's most trusted ally. Her piercing gaze met Rimuru's as they entered the room. Rudra rose from his throne, spreading his arms wide in greeting. Rudra. Rimuru Tempest, it is an honor to finally meet the great ruler of the Monster Federation. Welcome to my humble palace. Rimuru stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Rimuru. I'm here because you proposed a ceasefire and a peace agreement. Let's not waste time with pleasantries. What exactly are you offering? Rudra chuckled and gestured to the ornate table set up for their meeting. Rudra. Straight to business. Very well, let's discuss the future. But first, please, sit. We should talk as equals. Rimuru, Ultima, Diablo, and Benimaru remained standing, their eyes never leaving Rudra and Velgrind. Rimuru. I prefer to stand. Get to the point, Rudra. The Emperor's smile faltered for a moment before he nodded and continued. Rudra. As you wish. Rimuru, you've proven to be a formidable force, but the Eastern Empire has resources and power far beyond what you've faced so far. However, I believe in cooperation over needless conflict. Together, we could create a new world order. Rimuru crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow. Rimuru. A new world order? And how exactly do you see that working? Rudra's eyes gleamed with ambition as he stepped forward. Rudra. Simple. You become my subordinate. With your power, and with Velgrind and I at the helm, we could control the entire world. Think of it, Rimuru, the ultimate peace, with us as the rulers. There was a moment of stunned silence in the room. Rimuru's eyes narrowed slightly, and Benimaru's hand twitched toward his sword. Ultima's playful smile vanished, replaced by a look of barely contained rage. Diablo's expression darkened, his eyes glowing with a dangerous light. Rimuru's voice was cold as ice. Rimuru. Subordinate. Did you really think I'd come all this way just to bow to you? Rudra's smile returned, but there was an edge to it now. Rudra. I was hoping you would see reason. The world cannot be controlled by monsters alone, Rimuru. You need someone like me to lead it properly. Velgrind, who had remained silent up until this point, spoke up, her voice smooth and confident. Velgrind. We could accomplish great things together, Rimuru. Why fight a war when you could join us and claim everything without lifting a finger? Rimuru's eyes shifted to Velgrind, then back to Rudra. Rimuru. I'm not interested in ruling the world, and I'm definitely not interested in being anyone's subordinate. Tempest is my nation, and we don't need your help to thrive. Rudra's eyes hardened, and his smile turned into a thin, dangerous line. Rudra. I was hoping you'd be more reasonable, but I see now that you're just as arrogant as the other so-called demon lords. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew heavier, and a dark aura began to emanate from Rudra and Velgrind. Rimuru's instincts screamed that something was very wrong. Rimuru's voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it. Rimuru. What are you planning, Rudra? Rudra's smile returned, but this time it was cold and menacing. Rudra. You see, Rimuru, this has all been a ruse. I never intended to make peace with you. I wanted to lure you here, far from Tempest. Rimuru's eyes widened slightly as a sinking feeling settled in his chest. Rimuru. What do you mean? Velgrind stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Velgrind. While you've been here, talking about peace, the real Emperor Rudra and I have been in Tempest, dealing with your pet dragon. Rimuru's heart skipped a beat as he realized what they were saying. Rimuru. Veldora. Rudra's laughter echoed through the throne room. Rudra. That's right, the Veldora you left to protect your nation is currently being controlled by the real me. The one standing before you is nothing more than a parallel existence, a puppet I created to keep you occupied. Rimuru's fists clenched as rage boiled inside him. He had been deceived, and now Veldora was in danger. He glared at Rudra, his voice low and dangerous. Rimuru. What have you done to Veldora? Velgrind's smile widened. Velgrind. We've used the Regalia Dominion to seize control of him. By now, he's fully under Rudra's command. Your precious storm dragon is ours to command. Diablo, who had been silent throughout the exchange, stepped forward, his eyes glowing with fury. Diablo. You dare to betray Rimuru-sama? You will suffer for this? Benimaru drew his sword, his eyes blazing with determination. Benimaru. We need to return to Tempest, now. Rimuru nodded, his mind racing, but before they could act, Rudra raised his hand, and a powerful barrier surrounded the room, blocking any escape. Rudra. Leaving so soon? I can't allow that, Rimuru. Not until I've dealt with you properly. Ultima, her bloodlust rising, let out a low growl. Ultima. You're going to regret this, Emperor. I'm going to tear you apart. But before anyone could move, Rudra and Velgrind's forms began to flicker and distort. Their images wavered like mirages, and then they vanished entirely, leaving behind an empty throne room. Rimuru cursed under his breath. Rimuru. Damn it. We walked right into their trap. Diablo clenched his fists, his frustration palpable. Diablo. We must return to Tempest immediately, Rimuru-sama. If they've truly taken control of Veldora. Benimaru sheathed his sword, his eyes hard. Benimaru. There's no time to waste. Let's go. Rimuru nodded, his face set in determination. Rimuru. We're going back. Veldora is counting on us. As they rushed out of the palace, Rimuru couldn't shake the image of Veldora, trapped under the control of Rudra and Velgrind. He had to save his friend, no matter the cost. Setting. Tempest. The battlefield back in Tempest. The real Rudra stood with a cruel smile on his face, watching his Veldora, now fully under his control, wreaking havoc on the lands of Tempest. The storm dragon roared, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light as he unleashed torrents of destructive power. Velgrind stood beside Rudra, her arms crossed as she observed the chaos. Velgrind. It's beautiful, isn't it? The mighty Veldora, finally under control. Rudra laughed, his voice filled with triumph. Rudra. With Veldora at our command, not even Rimuru can stop us now. Tempest will fall, and the world will be ours. As the battle raged on, Veldora's roar echoed across the land, a terrifying reminder that even the strongest could be bent to another's will. And far away, Rimuru and his allies raced back to Tempest, their hearts filled with resolve. The fate of their nation, and their friends, hung in the balance.